about is second person narrative. Second person narrative is the least common of the writing styles. Most of the major writing is either first person or third person. And the reason for that is that it's particularly difficult to carry off second person narrative. And even when you do second person narrative, it is usually in shorter pieces. One common example of second person narrative that we all find is in advertising. That's all directed towards you, right? But that is, I'm not considering advertising as writing. No means, not to offend anyone, but I'm not going to consider that. But in any pieces of length to establish, to achieve your goals through second person narrative is considerably tough. But I thought it might be worth a while to look at a story that's really got a lot of acclaim as a second person narrative story, and then we can do a little exercise about that. Okay, so I put together a small PowerPoint, and let me just share that with you guys. Can you see this?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, excellent. Okay, so the story is called How to Become a Writer. It's available as a standalone book as well, but it's from her first collection of stories called Self-Help, which came out in 1985. There's nothing, by way of author biography, I don't have any inputs. She was born in 1957, and then she did an MFA. She was a paralegal for a couple of years, and then she got into writing. So there's really nothing that stands out by way of extraordinary, except that she's a very successful writer, which alone is enough to garner all our envy and admiration, I guess. So some of the points around second person narrative is that you won't use the word I at all, or maybe you'll only use it in direct speech, but you will hardly use I. It will be more of you. It's the idea of second person narrative is that the whole the narration is made as if you're talking to someone, as if you're mentioning it to someone. Now you can use it cleverly the way Lorrie Moore is using it, where she's it's being structured as a second person narrative, but it's very autobiographical in the way she uses it. We'll see that when we go through the story. And if you go through all the novels, there are very few of them that are in second person narrative. Now, there are two types of second person narrative, explicit and implicit. Explicit means you use the pronoun use. It's, you wake up, you find no one at home. You look down, you see that you are now a giant insect. This would be metamorphosis in second person. You try to move your arms, it doesn't work, and then if you try that whole story in that way, as a writing challenge is different, but if you read it written like that, it will give you a different impact. Okay. And one of the things about second person narrative is that when you start using that you, it's a lot of the fourth wall is broken down, and as a reader, you're much more implicit, because when you say something like, you bang against the wall, but your parents don't hear you, then it's not somebody else's story, right? As a reader, it almost becomes like the writer of the story has kind of included you saying that this experience is yours as well. So that's one of the achievements of second person narrative. This is probably the most famous book written in second person narrative. It's J. McKeown's Bright Lights, Big City. I have read it, and I must shamefully admit that it didn't even register me that it was in second person narrative, because when I read it, I didn't have any pretensions to being a writer. And it's just a great book. It's very illuminating on the corruption of, big cities and kind of what it does to people. So this is the kind of stuff you'd have. You are not the kind of guy, this is the first paragraph. You are not the kind of guy who would be at a place like this at this time of the morning. But here you are. And you cannot say that the terrain is entirely unfamiliar, although the details are fuzzy. You are at a nightclub talking to a girl with a shaved head. The club is either Heartbreak or the Lizard Lounge. All might come clear to you if you could just slip into the bathroom and do a little more Bolivian marching powder. Then again, it might not. A small voice inside you insists that this epidemic lack of clarity is a result of too much of that already, and so on and so forth. Okay. And this is one of my favorite books. It's written by Calvino. It's called If on a Winter's Night, a Traveler. And this is particularly meta in terms of second person narrative, because not only is it second person narrative, but it starts with you picking up the book called If on a Winter's Night, a Traveler. Okay. So the book is about a reader who's you reading the book called, and it's got layers in it. It's he's one of the great Italian writers and probably one of the great Western writers of the past decade, the past century. So, like, you are about to begin reading Italo Calvino's new novel. This is not a blurb. This is the first page of the book. If on a winter's night a traveler, relax, concentrate, dispel every other thought. Let the world around you fade. Best to close the door. The TV is always on in the next room. Tell the others right away, no, I don't want to watch TV. So this is what I meant. Like, you can use I only, but if you're doing direct speech. Raise your voice. They won't hear you otherwise. I'm reading. I don't want to be disturbed. Maybe they haven't heard you. With all that racket, speak louder, yell. I'm beginning to read Italo Calvino's new novel. Or if you prefer, don't say anything. Just hope they leave you alone. So I think from this example, you'll get an idea of some of the tricks you can do using second person narrative in terms of what effect you can achieve. But also there's a big limitation because you cannot talk about anything that is not happening to that character. You don't have a third person to an omniscient narrator. You don't have any of those. And it all has to be viewed through one prism. So that makes it a big challenge. So there's some other books as well. There are two books by Mohsin Hamid, which are both second person narrative, and they're both pretty good. The Reluctant Fundamentalist, which I think it's a second book, and then How to Get Filthy Rich in Rising Asia. So How to Get Filthy Rich in Rising Asia is a good example of how a lot of second person narrative is written. It's almost like a self-help book. It's almost like instruction to the reader. First, buy a car. Make sure to buy that kind of stuff, So you're directing, and through pretending to direct the reader, you can kind of disclose stuff about yourself. One thing about second person narrative, when you write it, it only works if you make the character kind of open and visible. You have to make sure that people know who the character is. You can't keep their emotions oppressed because people have to get engaged on a certain level there. Even more so than with, say, third person narrative, I would say. And these are some of the more famous short story examples. Jennifer Egan's Black Book. I know Sini and I were talking about it once. That's a terrific example. It's available for free on the net. You should read it.
Shankar, I think it was Black Box.
Black Box, I'm sorry. It's Black Box. Yes, thank you. That's my mistake. Black Box. Lust by Susan Minot. How to Talk to a Hunter. Girl, this is a story that was read in one of Manasi's sessions when she did 10 stories in 10 minutes. Remember that?
Yeah. Back
in Pagdandi, when we had the session in the basement, I think she read out Girl by Jamaica Kincaid. Juno Diaz, those are two different stories. Alma is one and The Cheater's Guide to Love is another. And then Lorrie Moore has the one we're reading today. And then there's another one called How to Be an Other Woman, which is about how to be the third woman in a relationship. So on. I can share these names with you, but you can also find them online. Okay. So all right. Bunker 14. Okay, I didn't know about that. That also is interesting. Okay, I'll make a note of that. Aniruddha Bahal. Okay. Safe to say I've never heard of it. Okay.
It's not my fault.
I'm sorry, who was that? Okay, whoever's not speaking, can you just go on mute? It'll just make it easier for the rest of us. And let's start the story. Okay. How to become a writer. First, try to be something, anything else. A movie star / astronaut, a movie star / missionary, a movie star / kindergarten teacher, president of the world. Fail miserably. It is best if you fail at an early age, say 14. Early critical disillusionment is necessary so that at 15, you can write long haiku sequences about thwarted desire. It is a pond, a cherry blossom, a wind brushing against sparrow wing leaving for mountain. Count the syllables, show it to your mom. She is tough and practical. She has a son in Vietnam and a husband who may be having an affair. She believes in wearing brown because it hides spots. She looked briefly at your writing, then back up at you with a face blank as a donut. She'll say, how about emptying the dishwasher? Look away. Shove the forks in the fork drawer, accidentally break one of the freebie gas station glasses. This is the required pain and suffering. This is only for starters. In your high school, English class, look at Mr. Killian's face. Decide faces are important. Write a villanelle about pores. Struggle. Write a sonnet. Count the syllables. 9, 10, 11, 13. Decide to experiment with fiction. Here you don't have to count syllables. Write a short story about an elderly man and woman who accidentally shoot each other in the head, the result of an inexplicable malfunction of a shotgun which appears mysteriously in their living room at one night. Give it to Mr. Killian as your final project. When you get it back, he has written on it, some of your images are quite nice, but you have no sense of plot. When you are home in the privacy of your own room, faintly scrawl in pencil beneath his black inked comments, plots of a dead people, poor face. Take all the babysitting jobs you can get. You are great with kids. They love you. You tell them stories about old people who die idiot deaths. You sing them songs like Bluebells of Scotland, which is their favorite. And when they're in their pajamas and have finally stopped pinching each other when they are fast asleep, you read every sex manual in the house and wonder how on earth anyone could ever do those things with someone they truly loved. Fall asleep in a chair reading Mr. McMurphy's Playboy. When the McMurphys come home, they will tap you on the shoulder, look at the magazine in your lap, and grin. You will want to die. They will ask you if Tracy took her medicine all right. Explain, yes, she did, that you promised her a story if she would take it like a big girl, and that seemed to work out just fine. Oh, marvelous, they will explain. Try to smile proudly. Apply to college as a child psychology major. As a child psychology major, you have some electives. You've always liked birds. Sign up for something called the ornithological field trip. It meets Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2. When you arrive at room 134 on the first day of class, everyone is sitting around a seminar table talking about metaphors. You've heard of these. After a short, excruciating while, raise your hand and say diffidently, excuse me, isn't this bird watching 101? The class stops and turns to look at you. They seem to all have one face, giant and blank as a vandalized clock. Someone with a beard booms out, no, this is creative writing. Say, oh, right, as if perhaps you knew all along. Look down at your schedule, wonder how the hell you ended up here. The computer, apparently, has made an error. You start to get up to leave, and then don't. The lines at the registrar this week are huge. Perhaps you should stick with this mistake. Perhaps your creative writing isn't all that bad. Perhaps it is fate. Perhaps this is what your dad meant when he said, it's the age of computers, Francie. It's the age of computers. Decide that you like college life. In your dorm, you meet many nice people. Some are smarter than you, and some, you notice, are dumber than you. You will continue, unfortunately, to view the world in exactly these terms for the rest of your life. The assignment this week in creative writing is to narrate a violent happening. Turn in a story about driving with your Uncle Gordon and another one about two old people who are accidentally electrocuted when they go to turn on a badly wired desk lamp. The teacher will hand them back to you with comments. Much of your writing is smooth and energetic. You have, however, a ludicrous notion of plot. Write another story about a man and a woman who, in the very first paragraph, have their lower torsos accidentally blitzed away by dynamite. In the second paragraph, with the insurance money, they buy a frozen yogurt stand together. There are 6 more paragraphs. You read the whole thing out loud in class. No one likes it. They say your sense of plot is outrageous and incompetent. After class, someone asks you if you are crazy. Decide that perhaps you should stick to comedies. Start dating someone who's funny, someone who has what in high school you called a really great sense of humor, and what now your creative writing class calls self-contempt giving rise to comic form. Write down all of his jokes, but don't tell him you are doing this. Make up anagrams of his old girlfriend's name and name all of your socially handicapped characters with them. Tell him his old girlfriend is in all of your stories, and then watch how funny he can be. See what a really great sense of humor he can have. Your child psychology advisor tells you you are neglecting courses in your major. What you spend the most time on should be what you are majoring in. Say yes, you understand. In creative writing seminars over the next 2 years, everyone continues to smoke cigarettes and ask the same things. But does it work? Why should we care about this character? Have you earned this cliche? These seem like important questions. On days when it is your turn, you look at the class hopefully as they scour your mimeographs for a plot. They look back up at you, drag deeply, and then smile in a sweet sort of way. You spend too much time slouched and demoralized. Your boyfriend suggests bicycling. Your roommate suggests a new boyfriend. You are said to be self mutilating and losing weight, but you continue writing. The only happiness you have is writing something new in the middle of the night, armpits damp, heart pounding, something no one has yet seen. You have only those brief, fragile, untested moments of exhilaration when you know you are a genius. Understand what you must do. Switch majors. The kids in your nursery project will be disappointed, but you have a calling, an urge, a delusion, an unfortunate habit. You have, as your mother would say, fallen in with a bad crowd. Why write? Where does writing come from? These are questions to ask yourself. They are like, where does dust come from? Or why is there war? Or if there's a God, then why is my brother now a cripple? These are questions that you keep in your wallet, like calling cards. These are questions your creative writing teacher says that are good to address in your journals, but rarely in your fiction. The writing professor this fall is stressing the power of the imagination, which means he doesn't want long descriptive stories about your camping trip last July. He wants you to start in a realistic context, but then to alter it, like recombinant DNA. He wants you to let your imagination sail, to let it grow big bellied in the wind. This is a quote from Shakespeare. Tell your roommate your great idea, your great exercise of imaginative power, a transformation of Melville to contemporary life. It will be about monomania and the fish eat fish world of life insurance in Rochester, New York. The first line will be, call me fish meal. And it will feature a menopausal suburban husband named Richard, who, because he is so depressed all the time, is called Mopey Dick by his witty wife Elaine. Say to your roommate, Mopey Dick, get it? Your roommate looks at you, her face blank as a large Kleenex. She comes up to you like a buddy and puts an arm around your burdened shoulders. Listen, Francie, she says, slow as speech therapy. Let's go out and get a big beer. The seminar doesn't like this one either. You suspect they are beginning to feel sorry for you. They say, you have to think about what is happening. Where is the story here? The next semester, the writing professor is obsessed with writing from personal experience. You must write from what you know, from what has happened to you. He wants deaths, he wants camping trips. Think about what has happened to you. In 3 years, there have been 3 things. You lost your virginity, your parents got divorced, and your brother came home from a forest 10 miles from the Cambodian border with only half a thigh, a permanent smirk nestled into one corner of his mouth. About the first, you write, it created a new space which hurt and cried in a voice that wasn't mine. I'm not the same anymore, but I'll be okay. About the second, you write an elaborate story of an old married couple who stumble upon an unknown landmine in their kitchen and accidentally blow themselves up. You call it For Better or for Liverwurst. About the last, you write nothing. There are no words for this. Your typewriter hums. You can find no words. At undergraduate cocktail parties, people say, oh, you write. What do you write about? Your roommate, who's consumed too much wine, too little cheese, and no crackers at all, blurts, oh my God, she always writes about her dumb boyfriend. Later on in life, you will learn that writers are merely open, helpless texts with no real understanding of what they have written, and therefore must half believe everything and anything is said of them. You, however, have not yet reached the stage of literary criticism. You stiffen and say, I do not. The same way you said it when someone in the 4th grade accused you of really liking oboe lessons, and your parents really weren't just making you take them. Insist you're not very interested in any one subject at all, that you are interested in the music of language, that you are interested in syllables, because they are the atoms of poetry, the cells of the mind, the breath of the soul. Begin to feel woozy. Stare into your plastic wine cup. Syllables? You will hear someone ask, voice trailing off, as they glide slowly toward the reassuring white of the dip. Begin to wonder what you do write about. or if you have anything to say, or if there even is such a thing as a thing to say, limit these thoughts to no more than 10 minutes a day. Like sit ups, they can make you thin. You will reach somewhere that all writing has to do with one's genitals. Don't dwell on this, it will make you nervous. Your mother will come to visit you. She will look at the circles under your eyes and hand you a brown book with a brown briefcase on the cover. It is entitled How to Become a Business Executive. She has also brought the names for baby encyclopedia you asked for. One of your characters, the aging clown school teacher, needs a new name. Your mother will shake her head and say, Francie, Francie, remember when you were going to be a child psychology major? Say, Mom, I like to write. She'll say, Sure, you like to write. Of course. Sure, you like to write. Write a story about a confused music teacher and title it, Schubert was the one with the glasses, right? It's not a big hit, although your roommate likes the part where the two violinists accidentally blow themselves up in a recital room. I went out with a violinist once, she says, snapping her gum. Thank God you're taking other courses. You can find sanctuary in 19th century ontological snags and invertebrate courting rituals. Certain globular mollusks have what is called sex by the arm. The male octopus, for instance, loses the end of one arm when placing it inside the female body during intercourse. Marine biologists call it seven heaven. Be glad you know these things. Be glad you're not just a writer. Apply to law school. From here on in, many things can happen. But the main one will be this. You decide not to go to law school after all, and instead, you spend a good big chunk of your adult life telling people how you decided not to go to law school after all. Somehow you end up writing again. Perhaps you go to graduate school. Perhaps you work odd jobs and take writing courses at night. Perhaps you are working on a novel and writing down all the clever remarks and intimate personal confessions you hear during the day. Perhaps you are losing your pals, your acquaintances, your balance. You have broken up with your boyfriend. You now go out with men who, instead of whispering, I love you, shout, Do it to me, baby. This is good for your writing. Sooner or later, you have a finished manuscript, more or less. People look at it in a vaguely troubled sort of way and say, I'll bet becoming a writer was always a fantasy of yours, wasn't it? Your lips dry to salt. Say that of all the fantasies possible in the world, you can't imagine being a writer, even making the top 20. Tell them you were going to be a child psychology major. I bet, they always say. You'd be great with kids. Scowl fiercely. Tell them you're a walking blade. Quit classes, quit jobs, cash in old savings bonds. Now you have time like warts on your hands. Slowly copy all of your friends' addresses into a new address book. Vacuum. Chew cough drops. Keep a folder full of fragments. An eyelid darkening sideways. World as conspiracy. Possible plot. A woman gets on a bus. Suppose you threw a love affair and nobody came. At home, drink a lot of coffee. At Howard Johnson's, order the coleslaw. Consider how it looks like the soggy confetti of a map. Where you've been, where you're going. You are here, says the red star on the back of the menu. Occasionally, a date with a face blank as a sheet of paper asks you whether writers often become discouraged. Say that sometimes they do, and sometimes they do. Say it's a lot like having polio. Interesting, smiled your date. And then he looks down at his arm hairs and starts to smooth them all, always, in the same direction. So let that sit for a minute before I poll the room for feedback. Anybody can go. What did you guys feel about the story? Anybody can start. I only ask that when someone is talking, the rest of us keep quiet wherever possible so that everyone gets an opportunity to speak their mind.
Can I ask more basic question for my own clarification? Is that
what is it?
My question? I'm trying to understand. I'm not sure what is the answer to this. Is this
just ask the question?
Yeah. Is this things is happening to her herself, the author herself? Is that
Kranti, I have the same information everybody in this room has. We've read that story and that's it. What you make from it is really up to you. It's the interpretation of the reader at this point. So I just want to...
Then I will like to say, I think these are the things that is happening to her as a writer.
Okay.
But I wanted to know what everybody else thinks.
No. So what does that generally make you feel like? How does it make you feel? Not sure.
I mean, I'm fine with it. I was just not sure. So.
Okay. Anyone else? Swati?
I love the way it reads. I mean, it's so funny. It's so humorous. Self-deprecating humor. And
very funny.
It works because it's in this form, I think. If it wasn't in this form where you're presuming that it's the writer's writing about herself and, she's a writer and she's telling you, this is what a writer does,
There's something disarming by making it this format. It's more disarming than if she had just said, I went to school, I didn't like it, I didn't know. If she did that, then it would be kind of self-pitying. But when she puts it this way, it's very funny. And I think her first collection is called Self-Help. And it's got another story called How. There's another story called How to Speak to Your Mother, I think. Or How to Deal with Your Mother. I think she has quite a few first person, second person pieces in that. So, and obviously that's why she calls the book Self-Help. Yeah.
It's just so funny because it's her, it's you. She's telling you, you want to be a writer? Here, this is the steps of being a writer. And it's absolutely ridiculous.
But she's not telling you, right? She's kind of talking about her own experience. That's the beauty. Like Kranti said, she's doing that, but she's doing it in a very kind of, not like, look at me, listen to me kind of way. She's being subtle about it. Yeah. Thanks.
It's not a lot about introspection, but more about the interactions she has with other people. And the employers, the parents, the other roommates, teachers, everybody else. And how messed up all the interactions, how discouraging everything is. But it's not bitter. It's like nasty, but it's not. It's humorous. It's not bitter. It's like she's like covering up. I think she's covering up the bitterness.
I don't know if it's just me, but your audio is very scrambled.
Okay, yeah.
There's a lot of disturbance when you speak. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Some words came.
I'll put something in chat then.
Yeah, please do that. Thanks.
You're very good yesterday, huh?
Sini, what did you think? You're the one who kind of reminded me of the fact that there was second person narrative when we talked about Black Box the other day. So I'm curious to find out how you felt about the story.
I found this really funny. It's I have heard her reading out her other stories also. So she always has this humor, self-deprecating humor that is masked in a different way. Like here itself, one thing is that I find about her is she's consistent. From the time she was a child, she has been writing. It has been subconsciously there that she wants to write. And her lack of plotting, like as many people are pointing it out to her that she does not have a plot.
Like this story doesn't have a plot either.
Yeah,
to even call it a story is a bit of a stretch, right?
Like in the Facebook of this particular event in Pune Writers, you have written it should have a beginning, it should have a middle, and all this. Nothing like that. This is just a random flow. This doesn't have a plot and I think she is feeling inadequate. She has her doubts whether she is a writer, but she somehow wants to get into it. And even though she knew that it is a creative writing class, she goes there. She's feigning that she has stumbled into it accidentally and all that. I think she's admitting in the story itself that she already knew that this was a creative writing course. Still, she went there. And she wants to give the computer the credit of, her managing her destiny, pushing her fate into that direction, or something.
I don't know if that's what she's doing. I think she's just using that as a comment on how random things can kind of guide you in the world. Like she doesn't know it's creative writing before she goes. She goes thinking it's ornithology, and only after she gets in the session she finds out it's creative writing. So she doesn't know beforehand.
No, there is a line which says that even though you already knew that, you have always known that this is creative writing, you still go there thinking it is ornithology. There is some line which says something like that.
I don't remember that line.
I think I read it. Oh, this is my second time reading it. So
Okay.
I've read it before.
Sign up for something called the ornithological field trip. It meets Tuesdays and Thursdays. When you arrive in 134 on the first day of class, right now she's thinking it's the bird class.
Go
Then
on.
she's
Yeah, I think I found it.
after a small experience, she asks, "Isn't this bird watching?" The class stops, and this is no. This is a creative writing. As if you say, "Oh, right," as if perhaps you knew all along. That's just to save face.
Okay.
Oh, that's what people do, right?
Okay.
So that's all it is. So she didn't know. It wasn't deliberate. But that's just a reflection on the effect that chance can have on us. I think that's all it means.
She did it deliberately. Yeah, I felt that she knowingly went into creative writing.
No.
That it is ornithology, and also the theme of blowing people up. I think her brother.
Yeah, I think all those stories are that's clearly because her brother
Yeah. So
was
just
blown up on her mind. Right? So that is kind of obvious the why she's got that.
Yeah, and it keeps coming up. And also that reference to this hippie quote, right? Suppose you had a war and nobody came for it. So that was like a slogan used during the Vietnam Wars and all by the hippies subculture.
I think that was what they hoped for. That was what the anti-war campaign was going for, right? They were like, what if you just don't go to war, give peace a chance, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay,
Thanks.
what did you think about all her stories are about pairs of people who accidentally kill themselves?
Well, I think that's a very obvious connection, right? Her brother gets his leg blown off, so she's and she's not able to write it. He said that's one of the three major events she talks about, but she's not able to talk about it.
Yeah.
So she kind of incorporated it. She incorporated into every story with people getting blown up. She does it so many times that it's a joke.
Yeah.
So I think, Samir, let's just go around the room. I'm sorry, I don't want to shut you up in there. Kinjal, what did you make of the story? Kinjal?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi. I think it was a brilliant craft. Very because second person narrative is very scary for me.
Not just you, for every writer, it is. It's very daunting, actually.
And there are people among our contemporaries I know who've done majority of their writing in second person narrative. So, but this was very instructive. Also, I like that this format has helped her to balance it between not becoming a rant, like she's not venting, or she's not preaching. Somehow she's using that. So it's not like, okay, I'm choosing second person to make it experimental or to, show that I can do this too. It's chosen for a particular reason and it fulfills that purpose.
Yeah, I think that's what Swati also mentioned, that if it had been first person, it would have just been a rant or a self-pity essay, right? It would have just been, I did this, nobody got me, my roommate. But because it's second person, you're kind of laughing all the way along,
And at the same time, it's not preachy. It's not preachy. At the same time, it's not preachy. So I was a little confused about the way time is moving in the story. Because she starts that the first assignment was about a violent thing. Then she goes on that for 2 years I did this. Then she says that the second assignment was something else. So
does she say second or next? I wasn't sure.
Something she says this next week or something like that. So I was a little confused about how time is moving in this piece. So you see in this creative writing.
Okay, the assignment this week, she says, okay, the violent happening. She doesn't say which week it is. And then she's restricted concepts.
Yeah, and then in create over the next 2 years. So she's basically doing her course. And then suddenly there's another assignment that this professor gives her.
No, I don't think she mentions it's like immediately after.
It's not linear. It's not linear, the time, obviously. I'm not expecting linearity, but just the way she speaks about her tryst with writing
I think the mind has its own way of sequencing things, no? Like in terms of what is when you sit down to write this. I mean, imagine it as I read somewhere that this is structured as a kind of a self-help column. Suppose someone wrote to Lorrie Moore and said, "How do you become a writer?" This is the steps, and she goes about this. And she kind of hops around a little bit, like, but that's fine. I think it works for this piece.
Yeah, it works, but for me it was very intriguing how time moves in this story, and I think not only the narrative style, but even how it is structured is very interesting.
Yeah,
It's
quite impressive what she's done. Thanks. Dhruva,
Hey, hi. So I have hit upon this format for the first time. So I'm not a English graduate or a writer by profession. So
no, we're all learning. Please, yeah. If any experience is good. If you have no experience, that's also fine. Yeah, don't. Yeah. It's not. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I found the format intriguing. It's the first time I hit it, so it took me some time to like get into the flow. I agree with someone else's observation that I think the time sequence of events were a little jarring. So I didn't get a sense that it just stopped, like suddenly the story was over and the like element of plot was weak, but it was a self journey, so to speak. So in that sense, maybe the use of the second person was the right choice in hindsight. It would not have been a natural style of writing. Again, like I mentioned, this is the first time I've hit it. So it took me some time to actually sink into what was happening. But by the time it happened, the story ended. So
element of plot is weak. She's kind of warned us on that. She's kind of belabored the point. She's being funny about it too. It's like, your plot is terrible. Plots are for poor. Plots are for dead people. And the next person, you don't get. And she keeps telling us to the point where we know that she knows, right? And she's written novels well. She knows about that. That's what makes it. It's funny without. Yeah, it's very real. It's not a story where you lose yourself in it, but you keep recognizing things in it. You know, the way the details. True, yeah. Like I love how she just uses, I think, 2 lines about her mother, but she does it so well. You know, this woman, her son is in Vietnam. Her husband may be having an affair, and she wears brown because it hides spots. I mean, that says so much about someone. Right? If I could write it shows how what they are concerned about and what they have to be concerned about. They don't have the luxury of dressing up in fancy clothes. They have to be practical. But it's just very, very concise and articulate the way she said that.
And her face is like a blank donut.
Yeah, there's a blank donut, and there's another one where there's a blank Kleenex. Yeah, that's also
There are 4. There are eyes blank. That blank simile is 4 times.
There's a lot of similes there. She does use them a lot. On surface reading, we should not mistake it for a casually written piece. I think she chipped away and chiseled it a lot to make the words she chooses, the example she chooses, the roommate. She's opening her heart to a roommate about the Moby Dick thing, and the roommate says, "Let's go have a beer." And I mean, anybody who's wanted to write, exactly, you go to someone and you're like bubbling about at this level, and they're like, so what did you think of the match? No, you're not getting it. You're somewhere else. You know, and I'm sure the reverse is also true at times. But yeah, thanks, Dhruva.
Thanks.
Chaitali, what did you make of the story?
I enjoyed this piece. As everyone pointed out, I think there are a lot of similes in this. And I really enjoyed the way she moves between, even though it's second person, it sort of feels, when it's direct, it sort of just you are more immersed in the reader. And then even though it's like it is almost in, I don't know if it's autobiographical in some parts where she's talking about her mother or whatever, it's fictionalized or non-fiction, I don't know. But I think the transition was very smooth.
It is fiction. It is autobiographical because she also was, I think she was a paralegal for 2 years. So it's obviously some of it is autobiographical. Yeah. It's fictionalized.
No, but usually what you find is in second person. If it's direct second person, sometimes it's easier as a reader to slip into, especially like it's directed to writers, right? This piece.
Yeah.
And then when you move on to when she's talking about her mother, it isn't as jarring. Which I think happens sometimes in second person. at least for me as a reader. And
I haven't
some
read.
of the lines, this line I really loved, like later on in life you will learn that writers are merely open, helpless texts. So that felt so true to life to me.
Oh, she also kind of punctures her pretensions as writer, right? What does this mean? Have you earned this? And she's like, these questions seem important to you. The way she says that, that's funny. So
Yeah.
she says,
And
yeah, go on.
I don't know, overall I really like the piece, but I don't know, I'm not happy with the ending.
The ending.
That might just be my preference.
Okay.
I think the ending is just yet another person who's a blank Kleenex, who's a date. You know, everybody's like patronizing her and not understanding her.
Even more than the ending, I like the 2 paragraphs up where she talks about at Howard Johnson's. Consider how coleslaw looks like the soggy confetti of a map, where you've been, where you're going. And these maps at restaurants, especially if you're on a highway, they'll have a star which says you are here, right? And it's very precise. It's pinning down. But actually, as a writer, your existence and your awareness of your existence is so tenuous that you can never say that this is where you are. I think that's the conflict she's bringing about. So this is beautiful to me.
Also, Howard Johnson's happens to have very bright colors that you associate that particular shop with.
Okay.
Like McDonald's, you would associate with yellow and red, the M signal. Howard Johnson's is this teal blue and orange, bright orange. So she's bringing in coffee, the smell of coffee with the colors of Howard Johnson's and
she's being specific about that.
Many things that just that one word makes a difference.
Yeah. Thanks. Sumit, I don't know if you joined late. Were you able to get in on the beginning itself, or?
Yeah, everything.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, what did you make of the story?
This story seems tailor-made for me. It's got it has second-person time jumps, self-help writing about writing, puns, and asking people if you get the puns.
Moby Dick, and then
Moby Dick and call me
fish meal. Oh, I laughed so much when I read Call Me Fish Meal.
That's very funny too. I loved it. I have no points about complaints as such as others have.
I don't think anybody had complaints. People had observations, I think, by and large. I don't think it's a story per se, but it's a story. It's in the wider definition of what a story is nowadays. It's a story. It's a short story, fair enough. But
yeah, it's a story about a person.
Correct.
Yeah,
and Chaitanya, I don't know if it was addressed to writers. It's more of the inner workings of a writer in terms of what a writer goes through, and it's just structured in this format, I think. But I know what you mean when you said that how to become a writer.
Yeah,
that's the construct.
Like, yeah.
That's fair. Yeah. Thanks.
And I loved how she jumps to future tense too in the middle. And it didn't feel jarring to me. It flows with the story, and I'm marveled at how she was able to achieve that.
It's extremely tightly. First, when I read it, I didn't get it. When I read it, I kind of liked it, but I went, okay, what is this about? And I read it closely, and I noticed all the things that you guys have observed. The jumping, and then the different tenses. And the first thing I picked up on the story was the humor, and I think what Swati said was very insightful. It wouldn't have worked as first person at all. It had to be second person to avoid self-pity. The third person would have been too distant. It would have been like told so many times. There'd be nothing in it. So the form completely fits the message. The medium and the message are completely synchronous, I would say. Yeah.
And I love that simile specifically. Face as blank as a vandalized clock. Because when you think about it, it's so clever.
That is that and the Kleenex.
I love that one too.
Yeah, the vandalized clock is brilliant. So she's kind of not showing off. She's so skilled, and you see it in those things. She talks about. And the insecurity that she has, I think it's there with all writers all the time. And it's something that we've realized through our studying of writers and interviews, and that we know that for a fact. So that is that.
The problem I have with second-person stories that I write is it appealing only to writers? This one, I think, might appeal to a larger audience too. when they read.
Oh, it did. I think it was, yeah,
Right?
it probably, it did. I mean, it did well. Yeah. And it's,
Yeah.
writers can appreciate it more, I would say.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, that's all it is. Yeah. Thanks, Jimmy. Arun, what did you think about the story?
I also find writing in second person very, very dicey.
Very challenging.
Very,
Dicey
very
is a good
challenging.
word.
I mean, for me, for others probably, yeah, challenging. And yet I see many of the contemporary writers are writing in second person. And I wish to know that what happened. How come they are writing? Many of my friends, they write poems, short stories. I recently, not recently, a few months ago, I read Michel de Costa's one short story in Out of the Print that was written well in the second person. So the question is that what has really happened? Because there is a once upon a time that it used to be a little frowned upon.
One thing, don't you think? I think it lends itself easier to poetry than prose. Don't you think? Is it? I think I've seen more poems written in second person than stories. It seems like the longer the format, the harder it is to bring up. And I'm not saying that it's easier in poetry, but it's almost, you can write a poem as a kind of pull someone close to you and have a conversation with them, that kind of style. So it works better in a poem. And that's my take on it. I was thinking about this too, on which it works on and which it doesn't.
I was just wondering if it's because today on Facebook we see so much of the pretend you that's out there. Are the pieces that you're seeing nowadays, is it the real you that people are talking about? And that's what makes it
Is it just self-promotion?
Because you're really talking about your good and bad points in today's world, which nobody ever does otherwise.
Could be one of the reasons. I can if I venture a guess, then I'll venture this, that the way we used to see ourselves, or we learned to see ourselves, say 20 years ago, that has changed quite a bit. So probably now it is seeing oneself in second person.
Yeah, the story is 35 years old. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that is, I mean, of course, that is Lorrie Moore's doing, right? So she will do whatever she wishes to do. So, but I'm thinking that now it has become more popular. So why is it that? And Shadi said, assume something.
It might be it's a more visual age. So we see ourselves a lot more than we would have even 20 years ago, right? Photographs and ourselves on cameras. Like, look at all of us. I mean, we're all on Zoom and we're all looking at each other, but we're also kind of checking ourselves out, making sure, am I presentable and also. So you see yourself a lot. But I don't know if that is related to second person, because it's not, I don't think there's been anything close to what we could call like an explosion in second person story. I think how much ever second person narrative is being written, there's many degrees more of first person and third person narrative, and it will always be that way, because just I think it's easier, to be honest with you. Not that any writing is easy per se, but
it's a part of the postmodern thing, right? You
reflect.
I was
reflect about writing.
Yeah, I was just coming to that. Yeah, because there's no distinction between you and I, right? Like there's a lot of interiority is being projected outside. That if I'm feeling like this, even you're feeling like this, and in that sense, then you is more engaging.
Correct.
It's a kind of test of confidence, that if I'm feeling lonely, then I guess you are feeling lonely too. And I think that's a part of postmodernism.
Or maybe not confidence, but identity.
Identity, I think, because if you write about yourself, some part of you is confident that there will be enough people who feel this as well. The universality of your specific feeling. So I don't know. This is getting. I think I'm running out of things to say here. That's her point. What's this? All right, let's go to Ruchita. What did you think of this? I mean, if anybody else, I think we've gone down a bit. Ruchita, Deepthi, Anita, and Ruchita. Yeah, and Sudha.
Yeah. Actually, since there was no plot, I found it confusing. She was talking about so many things all at once. So, frankly speaking, I couldn't figure it out. Maybe I have to read it once more.
I think that's, and I don't mean this in a pejorative way, but I think that's just because of the fact that everything you've read so far has kind of trained your mind to expect certain things. So you're like, okay, so she talks about this, it's going to be about this, and suddenly she jumps. We're like, so why did she mention this at all? And it can get confusing. Yeah.
So
So I think, yeah, that's a fair. If you haven't dabbled into experimental prose or experiment, then it can be a bit of a leap. But I would encourage read it again anyway. It's a lot of craft in it, definitely. And as an attempting to be a writer, it's something that we should all do. But that's very honest of you. Thanks. I appreciate that. Deepthi, what about you? What did you think of the story?
Shankar, I have read this type of story for the first time, so don't have much opinion about it. Yeah.
No,
The one part I like.
That's never stopped me in
she
the
breaks.
past. Go on, please go on. Yeah.
Yeah, she breaks the freebie that she got at the gas station, not any expensive crockery. So to vent out her frustration. So that's what I like. Otherwise, I mean, it was a difficult read for me. I mean,
Difficult how? You mean you didn't understand it?
I mean, no, actually, Shankar, see, initially, okay, that you appealed, and after some time, I thought, okay, you is some third person. That is you. So,
You
I
did?
mean, that
Okay.
shift between, yeah, because initially, I mean, I have read this type for the first time. So, yeah.
Okay.
First, I thought, okay, she's talking to me. Okay, you did this thing. Then halfway through, okay, that you is third, but somebody else she's talking. So I don't know what to say.
Breaking the glasses and shoving the forks is just a way of making sure that her mother doesn't ask her to do that work again, right? That's a very time-tested way of avoiding work at home. Like if you do it badly, they won't ask you to do it again. And she's kind of she's in a different
It
mood.
tells you
This is
what
her mother says,
economic
but she says
background they
that.
come from. It gives you the exact idea that
It does. It's very clear. It's beautiful. Yeah, yeah.
Without
And it's so
thinking.
concise. Just a few brushstrokes. And instead of saying we had to struggle for money, my mother worked 2 jobs, my dad, none of that. Just the brown spots and the kitchen item. It's brilliant. But thanks, Deepthi.
So she breaks glass because she's angry about the way the mother reacts. She shows her mother some stuff. Her mother gives her a blank look, and like it's totally different to what her is about. So
her mother has no time for these. In the world of her mother, analyzing a story is a huge indulgence, and so she kind of resents that from her mother. I think. Samir, your audio is still really poor. I'm not sure why.
Oh.
So all right. So let me just. Who else hasn't spoken yet? Anita, what did you think of the story?
Shankar, I think thanks for choosing this. It's a brilliant piece. And it's about authors writing their own account of how they became authors, in the middle of whatever people thought about them. So kind of what we all are undergoing, in the beginning. And I think it's the Frank, is she American? I think maybe American, right?
She is American, yes.
So
American.
It's a real frank American middle-aged woman or young woman story, I think, about her writing.
1957, 85. So she was 28 when she wrote, 26, 27 when she wrote this. So not that, when she wrote it, she was 26. She was in an MFA course at Cornell.
Yeah, so that's a very mature account of, I mean, I don't think.
I don't know if it's mature, but I think it's very self-aware. I think self-aware is a better word than mature. Mature.
I'm very impressed with this author, although I haven't heard of her earlier. I think she's smart and intelligent, and
she is smart and she is funny. There's no question about that. Yeah,
she's very funny. One of the very good humor I've come across in this year, I think.
Wow. Okay.
It's difficult to write humor, So
don't tell us. Yeah, we know. Except for Sumit, I think everybody else struggles.
It reminded me of that movie. You Got Mail, or
And
How was that? In Marathi, there's a book called Me Maza.
Oh.
About myself.
I don't know anything about Me Mata. But how does it remind you of You Got Mail?
Somehow I thought it was a self account. That movie. So somehow I remembered that movie. I don't know why.
Oh, because it has a lot of voiceover narrative. That's also first person. Anyway, okay. I mean, whatever fires synapses, we can't question those things. That's fine. Thanks.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thanks. Rujuta, what about you? Rujuta. Are you there? Are you speaking
Yes.
on? Okay, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, I was speaking on mute, I think.
Yeah, can you just repeat whatever you said?
Yeah. I think it was funny, tongue in cheek, and I loved it. It was very funny and very witty. Starting from the first paragraph itself, that if you want to be a writer, try being something, anything else. Right,
Yeah,
from a movie star,
that's become a very
astronaut.
famous line. You know, if you want to be a
Yeah.
writer, try anything else. Yeah, that's a very
And then
famous
get
first line.
disillusioned at 14, so you can write long haiku sentences at 15. That was, I mean, from the start itself, it was extremely funny and humorous. I loved it. Thank
She's
you.
making fun of haikus when she talks
Yeah.
about the cherry blossom and the wind touching and all. She kind of, you can see that she's smiling and having some kind of wicked fun with it. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for choosing this piece, because even I hadn't heard about her, so it was great to read her.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad to bring her to a wider audience.
Yeah.
I'm going to
I'll
ask
call
you
her up
to
and
make
ask
a
for some
list.
kind of commission if any of you guys buy the books. Yes, sorry, Anita.
I think I will ask you to make a list of good humor pieces, if you can.
Okay,
Because
sure.
there's so many which I haven't read, I think.
Sure, no problem. Happy to do that. Sudha, I'm glad you joined. Although I'm not sure if I should be glad. You have anything to say about the piece? You're on mute. Hello? All right. I think she's just figuring out how to use the Zoom controls.
Can I share one of my observation?
Yes, I think now everybody's spoken. The floor is open until, what time is it? For another 15 minutes before we start the writing exercise. Please, Kranti, Helen,
Shankar.
tell us what you thought.
Yeah, Shankar, probably
Yes,
Helen
sir.
has not spoken.
Yes, sorry, sir. Yeah, Kranti spoke and Helen did. Helen, can you tell us what you thought, and then Kranti can speak.
Oh, I thought it was well written, very creative and imaginative. The second person point of view, again, I have trouble with it as a reader because I like to interpret the stories from my own perspective as a reader. And I don't like to be commanded, you should feel this, you should think this way when you read some written word. So at some places, especially I think maybe the third paragraph, take all the babysitting jobs you get, you're great with kids, they love you, and so on. You tell them stories about old people who die a day, yes. Who die a day, yes, there's the humor. But I felt there were parts of this where the writing was quite dry, and without this tongue-in-cheek humor, it wouldn't be quite as good as it actually is. So there's a dryness I feel in the writing that comes along with using second person point of view.
Do you think that the dryness is because of second person? Is it?
Yes, absolutely. I also agree with Samir that there is, how could you say, there's a subtext, there's an undertone to this that is, there is a bitterness. I don't know if I'd call it bitterness, but there is a feeling of, oh God, I have to keep going through this. Maybe not bitterness, that might be an extreme word, but there is a feeling of an unpleasant feeling in this journey that she took to become the writer and complete a manuscript and so on. It wasn't all pleasant. It was unpleasant, very much unpleasant, according to how she's written herself. Challenging at times, to say the least, with the blank faces. Yeah, that was what I was thinking about.
Well, I think what Sumit said is right. You need some dryness for the humor to work, right? You can't just be laugh. You can't be hitting the gags, and all of them will fail. So you kind of have to mix it. You need that kind of dryness for this kind of humor. That's what I think. And yes, Kranti. Sorry, Helen, did you have anything else? Otherwise, Kranti can speak.
No, that was it.
I have my own variation of the same thing, but I think my variation has some difference. Is that
that's why it's called a variation. Go on, yeah.
Yes, I do believe. First of all, it is fantastic. Again, thank you, Shankar. It's something that I would have never run into. So I enjoyed reading it. It was a great, truly enjoyed it. So any of my comments should not be misunderstood. It's fantastic that we're doing this.
That's okay. None of these comments are going back to Lorrie Moore, so feel free to talk. And I didn't do anything about the book. So
No,
yeah, please go ahead.
I do think that the humor is deliberately used and very calculatively used as an antidote for the trials and tribulations. I would use the word trials and tribulations rather than the bitterness. So the trials and tribulations, reader is able to read through it all because of the very intelligent humor. Again, I would call it really superbly intelligent humor. But there is bitterness, rather there is this feeling of all writers, they go through this until eventually, if as and when they become famous, until then they're always suffering from this, that feeling of trials and tribulations. So it's
actually
wonderful.
there's one correction. I know that even after becoming famous and successful, writers still go through it. I know
okay.
established writers who still talk about sitting down after having written 10, 12 books, having won acclaim and prizes and recognition, that there's the fear and anxiety when it comes to the next book. So the anxiety never goes away, and in some way, anxiety is part of something that makes you write in the first place and gets you to write. So I don't think that goes away. And you said the humor is deliberate. Everything in the story is deliberate. It's a very, very intricately constructed story. It's not, nothing in there is left out by chance or put in there by chance.
Okay, I would like to respond to you. Thank you for the warning, Shankar.
What's the warning?
That the anxiety never goes away.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it never should also. It's kind of...
Shankar, could you check one thing?
Yeah.
That whether she was writing about people getting blown up only after her brothers suffered the same fate, or was she thinking about it even beforehand? I mean, writing about it beforehand.
It's after.
I don't know.
I don't
know,
remember
but I think
exactly.
it's after. Yeah, I think it's after. But
Search for Thai, and then after that, she has two accounts of people blowing themselves up. Before that, she writes about old people dying idiot deaths. Okay. But just after her brother's accident,
now people are blowing up.
That the people are blowing themselves up. Yeah. So she says she can't write about them, but it has seeped into her story.
Well, Arun, we have to remember that this is meta. She knows that she's writing about something, and she knows that her brother went to Cambodia and had that unfortunate accident. And she knows that this is what writers do, is that they steal from their lives and put it in their books. So obviously she knows that even a casual reading shows you that many characters get blown up in her plots, right? And you can obviously make the connection that she's put the writer's putting it in there because she had a personal family member do it. I don't know if Lorrie Moore's brother went to Cambodia, had a blown up. I don't know about that. But I think she's making the point that you may take that and put it in your stuff, to the point where everybody's making a point that you don't have a plot. Is that clear?
Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking about how she was, thinking about the sequence. That's all, while she was writing.
But there is a thing about a man and a wife blowing, like they are a dynamite blowing their torsos.
Correct. The husband and wife, right? The husband and wife who blow up and they start a yogurt stand, right?
Yeah, but that happens before we are told about
the brother. Yeah, but that's happened. Yeah, I still think she knew. I think the brother, it probably happened. No, because the brother, I don't get that though. The brother was in Vietnam, and he got blown up coming back from Cambodia, because she says the mother has a son in Vietnam, right?
He says near the border.
Cambodian border, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, Kinzel, you're right. The blow,
could have been the
one
same
blowing,
thing,
one blowing comes before the.
Yes, there are 3 times things blow up, and once is before the brother.
Correct. But anyway, it's knowing that she's really put it in this. It's not a casual story. It's not a story being read out at one of our Sunday sessions.
And Shankar, I want to say that we've spoken, a lot of people said that there's no plot. But if we say that the purpose, like, I don't know what is the purpose of a plot, but I'm just guessing that if the purpose of a plot is to establish a timeline, or to say that this happened, then this happened, then this happened, this story does that without telling us the plot. So how?
No, I think even
How?
here there is a plot, I think, per se,
Uh,
because she's mapping the journey of a writer, right? Like first you start with poetry, you're counting syllables, then you're moving to short story, you're not counting syllables. So there is a sort of journey that the writer goes through. So you can't really, I think you can't really say that it doesn't have a plot.
It doesn't have a conventional
It
plot
isn't
in
as
terms of
blatant as
inciting incident and
but there
resolution. And yeah, you're right. It's to say it doesn't have a plot. If I said it, that's wrong. It's unfair to say that it doesn't have a plot at all. It's kind of the non-linearity and the way she discloses facts to us is a different way of disclosing what the plot is.
because if something is completely without plot, it will only express an affect. This piece is expressing an experience, and how do you express an experience without having some kind of time factor and plot in it?
No, you're right. Something like Waiting for Godot has no plot, but you'd have to be. I think he's the only guy who tries to. You're right. There is a plot. I guess I'm just being conditioned by what is conventionally called the plot. But there is definitely. I'm more hesitant to call it a story. You know what I mean? I feel like there's stories and there's poems and there's novels, and there should be one more definition of this kind of short piece. And I don't know what it is. I'm not going to give an answer here.
My thing is, when we're speaking about plot, I think we should not get like labels should not hinder the reading of
Bring down
something
the
like
story.
this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Rutuja said very clearly that she didn't know what was happening. I think she's just like we all were at some point where we read all these traditional structured stories. The first scene we make the main character build up present. And then if you go by that, then this kind of story can be off-putting. But at least she was honest and say, yes, I agree with you. We should not let these labels bring down the weight of the work or kind of chip it into some sort of pigeonhole.
Is this the plot that you first try to communicate with your mom? That's the first thing that a person tries to do. Then they try to communicate with the teacher, who they next think is God, a child thinks is God. And then they try to, their classmates really matter in life, and other friends. And then she is at the age where somebody she's romantically involved with is her end point at this point, who doesn't care about her, rather cares about the hair on his arm more than worries about this. But
No, that's a very single line indictment of her date. My God, I hope whoever it was based on doesn't know it was about him. Like in one line, she can skewer someone like that. That's quite clever. Seriously.
And also, I like this story because for quite some time I didn't know whether the person talking to me is male or female. It is much later that I come to know that it's a female.
Oh, I just assumed that because it was Lorrie Moore. You're right.
Yeah,
It
but
doesn't. There's no gender giveaway.
You can't do that,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you can't do that, and so I
didn't do it consciously, but it was like in the back of my head, like knowing
But
that.
it's addressing you as you are a female, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what
is
doing.
it?
Yeah, you have
But
a
does
boyfriend that it does it multiple places, right?
Wait, can you help me? I didn't feel also.
You say your boyfriend needs to go cycling. Your roommate says you need to get a new
traditional
boyfriend. That was
sense.
funny.
Yeah.
That was funny. I love that.
Yeah.
Your boyfriend suggests cycling. Your roommate suggests a new boyfriend. Brilliant. The guy offering the solution is part of the problem, which is so true. It's
in today's world, you really cannot assume that it's the you is the male.
It's written in 1985. So
no. When you read a book, you have to know when it was written. It's essential to know the date and period and the environment it was written in. You cannot read it and then say, "Oh, why is he walking 6 miles? Why didn't he take an Uber?" No, this is written in 1600. They didn't have Uber. You can't.
When she came to the boyfriend, then I realized that the narrator is a girl. But till then, I didn't.
Even before that, when she's looking at the teacher and getting affected by him, that also says that she's a girl, and that is probably an infatuation.
Does it?
It does. One second, I'm just looking there.
Before that.
Before this, no?
beginning. In the beginning.
Yeah.
Pore face,
In your
pore
high
face,
school,
yeah.
look at Mr. Killian's face. Decide face is important. Write a villanelle about pores. I don't think it says anything about whether whether it's a man or woman.
So Mr. Killen's face, right?
Yeah.
That is Mr. Killen's face, and this
Killian,
person, Killian's face, and this person is looking at this face so closely, so in detail that she's even, or he or it is even discovering the pores, and so much in the pores that writing a vinyl about it, which is turning into later the plots are for dead people pore face. So that is coming into indignation or maybe outright hatred. I don't know what is that. Why this person will do that? The huge probability is that she's a girl.
No, I think if you're in writing class and you're studying
Yeah, I
faces, you
thought
can
that
be a
was a
man or a
very-
woman. I would say that being a babysitter is a clue that it's probably a woman, because there are more female babysitters than male babysitters. I don't think any sensible parents will leave their kids with a teenage boy. I mean,
By that logic, even her mother telling her to wash dishes.
Yeah, that's true. That's also kind of a stereotype, but it's probably
If
closer
you're
to
saying
that.
that babysitting is a female thing, then her mother telling her to is the first clue.
Very true.
But
Very true.
I don't agree with the teacher thing that
Yeah.
because she saw the
So
teacher.
Yeah, the babysitting is not a sexist thing. It's a just a sensible thing. You wouldn't want to give your kids in charge of 16-year-old boy who's ruled by his hormones and will probably attack the beers as soon as the parents go out of the house. The girls are kind of more
The
responsible.
teacher thing was mostly to ground the story in a starting point or something.
No, do you wait a second? Let me be a little clear about it. Do you think that there is a boy student looking at a teacher, English teacher, or a literature teacher, and looking at his pores and thinking about writing poems about that?
I don't think it's implausible. I don't think.
Oh,
it's
nothing is
implausible.
implausible in this world, Shankar. Nothing is implausible.
So then, I think you just answered your question. I think it's possible.
No,
I don't think it's
implausible.
outside the realm of possibility or plausibility. I think it's completely reasonable. Yeah.
Is it implausible that there is a boy and who was asked to wash dishes? No, it is not implausible.
No, but the babysitting one, I think it's within that. Within that reality,
within that environment, that world, I think.
It suggests that the babysitting one and the dishes one. Yeah.
Arun, even as a boy, I mean, I've sat in class and studied my teachers' faces up close just to avoid paying attention to the subject at hand, not because I'm going to write a villanelle.
Look,
it's not I don't think that is a gender giveaway.
Not implausible at all, but we know that infatuation happens. And during
it doesn't have to be infatuation. That's my point. You can look at someone's face without it being infatuation.
It's not infatuation here.
She's just looking at the face going, She's just studying. She thinks maybe she's been fed some information, or she knows that if you're going to be a writer, you have to observe. It can be anything. That's what my take of it was. I didn't pick up infatuation there.
Observation to me.
Yeah, and maybe when you start writing, you you get all sorts of advice.
So, I mean, is it not very interesting that she's only mentioning this literature teacher and Mr. something? Okay, not asking about anybody, not mentioning anybody else. And when the teacher is criticizing the writer for something and being harsh about it, she's feeling pretty bad about it. Does it not say anything to you?
No, just before that, she's written a poem about pores. So she's
Why
just
so?
told you that she happened to have written so if this morning, if I write something about pores, whoever I'll see, I'll notice their pores, because that's what I'm
No. First she saw the face, then she came to the conclusion the face is important.
But
then
before that, she wrote a poem about pores in the same paragraph.
No, same paragraph, but not before. Same paragraph, yes, but not before.
See, a villanelle on pores or something she has.
Yeah, she wrote a villanelle.
She wrote a villanelle.
Yes, so read it. Let's read it, Shati, together. In your
high school English class, look at Mr. Killian's face. Decide faces are important. Write a villanelle about pores. Struggle. Write a sonnet. Count the syllables. 9, 10, 11, 13. Decide to experiment with fiction. Here you don't have to count syllables. Write a short story about an elderly man. Blah, blah, blah.
So, Arun, your thing is that she observed a male teacher, or that she decided to write about pose. What is the These are two different things. So what
I have not understood your question. Come again, please.
you are saying that you realize that the narrator is a female because A, she observed the professor's face, or B, because she decided to write about pores.
It is building up, right? First, she observes the teacher's face. He then comes to this conclusion: the faces are important. That means that she feels certain amount of, I don't know the exact word, probably attraction towards that face, and then understands that okay, face tells many things.
No, but describing faces can be important even as a craft exercise if you want to be a writer.
She's a child. She doesn't know that she's going to be a writer yet.
No, but she can be attracted to writing about faces and not only because the teacher's face is attractive, right? I mean,
Yes,
are we just imposing that because she might be fascinated about beauty or external beauty, that is why she's a female? Are we imposing that?
No, wait a second. What you said, Chinjal, is right. That possibility is there. That she is so hell-bent on writing, which is later she says that she was not so sure about it because she didn't choose it. So we can actually take away that she was not so sure about writing or serious about writing. Okay, now we see that this is mentioned about Mr. Somebody and mentioning after looking at his face, faces are important. How one comes to that conclusion? The possibility that she found Mr. Killian's face interesting at least is far more probable than she is so serious about writing that she is going to write about many faces and many pores.
But just the thing that she's saying that faces are important, you're assuming she's finding him attractive. I'm finding a little kind of...
I mean, that's why I said before saying attractive, I said that, I don't know which word to use because that is going to be. So I'm trying to be very about that.
No, I agree. And I think I just need to use my moderator powers and kind of stop because we're all going on in circles and I'm feeling just a little bit dizzy. And I've created a writing exercise of sorts that I think we can all take up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask us different question altogether?
You can ask, but I'm not sure we'll have time to answer. Go ahead.
Okay. Now I just wondered if we few minutes.
Yes, Kanti, are you muting? You're muting yourself. You muted yourself.
Yeah, Kanti, do you have anything to say? Let's do it after the exercise, okay?
Let's take a photograph first.
Okay, fine.
Okay, let's take a photograph. Sumit, Chaitali, Sudha, Pujita, Deepti. Pujita, Deepti, yeah, good. Chaitali's got this Caribbean, like Arun has a lake behind him. Sumit, photo liya? Okay, good. Photos off, cameras off if you wish, and let's go into the exercise. And Kanti, we'll talk about it after we've done the exercise because these discussions they have tremendous power to digress, okay? All our discussions do, okay? All right. Okay, so I just came up with these couple of exercises. You can take any one of these choices, but try to write in second person. One is you can write a letter to your younger self, say 10 years younger or whatever, some kind of, think of when you were at some sort of a crossroads earlier and whatever decision you took, good or bad, whether it helped or hurt you. And then, so you're like your older self writing to your younger self. Don't overuse the you. Look at 20 sentences, maybe 15. That's fine. That's just a suggestion. Try to disclose a lot about yourself when you write the letter to self. Second option is look at your bucket list. If you have a bucket list, if you don't, more power to you. But think of something you want to accomplish in life and imagine you have, and then how you would write to a close friend or someone had you achieved it, and then how you describe that. And then this was an exercise I picked up from somewhere when people were going outdoors. I think it's happening again, but I don't know. Think about the last time you were outdoors and try to remember someone nearby. Write a small piece in second person as though you were talking to that person, describing what you saw, your impressions and conclusions. Like if you're at Pagdandi, there's someone sitting there playing chess and you say, you're dressed smartly, way too smartly for a chai cafe. You probably come here, you're waiting for someone. You fiddle around in your bag and take out a book. You open up to a page, smile at something that gives you some recollection, and something like that. I'm not going to give too much guidance here because it's better for you to work on it yourselves, and I don't know that much more anyway. So it's 4:30 now. Take any one of these. I'll leave the screen on this slide so you can look at. You take up any one of these exercises, 15, 20 lines. You can be back in 15 minutes. Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay, so everybody just mute yourselves, or Sumit or one of the organizers can mute everyone so we don't have to hear any background noises. Sure.